Hi, and welcome to another episode of Our Home with Mayor Sendzik. I'm Mayor Walter Sendzik, and we are heading into March break. So first and foremost, just make sure when you're out and about in the community that you're being aware of kids are going to be on their bikes, they're going to be running around, they may be in the local neighborhood parks, and if it's nice enough, they could be out there playing basketball. And today we're going to be talking about basketball, an amazing upcoming event that's going to be taking place in June here in St. Catharines at the Meridian Centre. As well, we're going to be talking about the Canada 2021 Games that are a couple years away, but how we've got to start preparing for it today. So joining me on this show, we have Michelle O'Keefe, who is the CEO of Basketball Canada, and also, I am told, a native of Welland.
That's true.
Played for E.L. Crosley? Centennial, okay. So we'll learn more about Michelle. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And joining her is Wayne Parrish, who is the just recently announced CEO of the Canada 2021 Summer Games. And Wayne, you've got a background in media. You've worked across the country. You've been in Vancouver. You've been in Toronto. You've been the Chief Revenue and Transformation Officer and COO of Post Media Network, so you know media.
I'd like to think I do, although these days it's changing so quickly, Walter, it's hard to know anymore.
You are right, but you also have a broad range of knowledge about sport. And when you were introduced as the CEO of the Canada 2021 Summer Games, that was one of the aspects that I think a lot of people commented on, is your knowledge of sport in Canada. You're a former journalist who I believe covered the first Canada Summer Games back in 1971?
You're very close, 1973 actually, and there were a couple of games before those ones, one winter and one summer, but that was the first one where I think it really broke through, and that was on the lower mainland of British Columbia in 1973. Burnaby and New Westminster hosted it, and it really seemed to break through into the public consciousness that year, Walter, and it's been a wonderful trajectory since then, and here we are many years later, and a vehicle that Pierre Elliott Trudeau created is now coming to Niagara in 2021, and we're so looking forward to the impact it's going to have on this community and on Canada at large.
Well, I want you to touch on one story, because when I was at the announcement for you becoming the CEO, that 73 Canada Summer Games featured an athlete that went on to the Olympics in 1976.
Yes, indeed.
Who got a silver medal.
A guy who was a good pal of mine, or became a good pal of mine in later years, but you know, there were so many stories, as there are in every Canada Summer Games, of young athletes that you haven't heard of before that suddenly do amazing things. And that particular summer day in August in New Westminster, I was there when a young guy from Vancouver, who I knew a little bit at the time, but jumped well over 2 meters and won the high jump. 3 years later, we were all sort of hunkered down around our television sets around the country, watching as Greg Joy won the silver medal at the Montreal Olympics. And that was kind of the iconic moment of the first Olympics Canada ever hosted. And it became an iconic moment that was preserved in history because CBC, through its nightly sign-off montage, that was the sort of the dominant image in that montage for 25 or 30 years after that. So it's a wonderful moment, but there's going to be so many more of those kinds of moments in the summer of 2021 right here in Niagara.
And we're going to be touching more on that in the next little while over the course of this show. And it is those moments, and it's also what it means to athletes to participate in these kind of sports. And Michelle, President and CEO of Canada Basketball, and also a policymaker on the international scene through the FIBA, which is the International Basketball Federation, and you're on the central board.
Yep.
And the first vice president of the FIBA Americas. And that's exciting because in June at the Meridian Centre, we are bringing some of the best up-and-coming basketball players in the Americas to the Meridian Centre because of the FIBA Under-18 America's Cup.
Yep.
And your role in that is?
We decided as a federation to bid. Then, first of all, we decided that hosting was going to be one of our strategic pillars. So the first event that we really saw as impactful for our plan was the U18 boys tournament So we entered, we put our hand up with our international federation and we said, you know, we want to bid. Then we did an RFP process across Canada, and lo and behold, the best plan that came forward was from Niagara. And so we're very excited to bring that event here in June. For me, it's like Christmas. Bringing basketball home to Niagara in this respect is really exciting for me.
And you've been involved in basketball for a while. You were involved in the 1994 World Basketball Championships for men held in Toronto and Hamilton. You were one of the coordinators there. And you've been involved in Ontario basketball since 2010.
Yeah.
Took a little bit of a break to go to a financial institution and then came back in this capacity. So your passion for basketball, did it start in Welland at Centennial?
It started before Centennial. I went to St. Kevin's for elementary school and played Welland Minor basketball.
Welland Minor basketball?
Welland Minor basketball. And it started there for me, and the obsession, passion, commitment, whatever you want to call it, hopefully not an obsession, started back then. And, you know, as a tall girl in elementary school, and basketball was a great place to go, and you knew you weren't alone. I believe team sport is very important for youngsters, especially girls, and so it was great for me.
And so your involvement at that level, and I know you went to the NBA All-Star game this year in LA, and your involvement at that level, how important is something like the U18s to be held in Canada for basketball growth?
I think it's critical from two perspectives. I think it's great for the Niagara region, the province of Ontario, and others in Canada to see what international basketball looks like in person. Because, you know, you could go to the Standard Tournament or the Tribune Tournament down here and you see the best of the high school boys or girls, and you think that's what you're aiming for. But I think what this tournament will do is allow everybody to see what the next level looks like when you're right there and live in the gym. Because I think it's very different. The coaching is different. The officiating is different. It's faster. It's more physical. So I think it'll be great for everybody to see what it looks like. I also think it's very good for the international teams in FIBA to see what Canada looks like, and in this case, particularly Niagara. Because they're going to see a fantastic facility, a beautiful community that's welcoming and warm and safe. And I think that everyone is going to really enjoy this tournament.
So who plays in this tournament? So it's the America's Cup. So give the viewers at home who are like, okay, I've never heard of this cup before. Who plays in it?
We have three subzones in the Americas. We have North America, Central, and South. For us in the U.S., we automatically get a berth. The Central Americans and South Americans have to play a qualifier to get to this tournament. If you ask me to name all 8 teams, I can't do that.
There's 8 teams?
There's 8.
That'll be coming from the Americas?
Yes. Canada and the U.S. for sure.
Yep.
Chile, Paraguay, Puerto Rico, Argentina. That's about all I can remember.
So the talent. Talk a bit about the talent. I think because it was like the U18 under 18 women's hockey tournament that we had here.
Yeah.
We sold out the Meridian Centre. It was packed every game. The gold medal game was you couldn't fit another person in the Meridian Centre. And these were under 18 women, and I remember Hockey Canada looking at it going, we've never seen this kind of enthusiasm for this level of hockey. This seems to be shaping up to be a similar experience.
I hope so. I was at the gold medal game of that IIHF tournament when Canada played the U.S. and I walked in there and I was so shocked at the level of energy and the fans' commitment, and the level of the athletes was fantastic. So the young boys that will be playing in this tournament some of them will be going into their first year of university, but most of them will be going into their senior year of high school. But these kids are probably, a lot of them are 2 years away from making the NCAA or 3 years away from the NBA. Kyrie Irving, Steve Nash, everybody's played in this tournament.
Really?
It's part of the pathway up through high performance basketball.
So the expectation is that in going to a tournament, participating and watching a tournament like this, you're seeing potential future NBA All-Stars playing here.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting because, and I know you're Canada basketball, so there's going to be a bias, but for the viewers thinking, should I get some tickets for this? How do you think Canada's going to do in a tournament like this?
We will do very well. We will battle the U.S. for gold.
And you're throwing that out there right now.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We played them 2 years ago in the finals. We had them by 20, and then we lost down the stretch, but we had them by 20. So absolutely, we're going for gold.
Now, from Canada basketball's perspective, this past year in Cairo was a very significant moment for Canadian basketball.
Yes.
So what happened?
It was our very first gold medal at a world championship. So our very first world championship.
And so that is in the history of men's basketball.
And women's.
We had a gold. We reached a gold medal.
Yes. We had a silver medal at the 1936 Olympics, the first time basketball was played. And we've had other medals at World University Games. But at this level, this is the highest we've ever done.
And it was great because we had some local talent that was there.
Abu Kijab, he was on the All-Star team.
And that's, again, and I think it goes to those moments that, Wayne, you talk about it. We have Abu, who's now he's playing at Oregon. So for those who are interested in the March Madness, his team, fingers crossed, they're going to make it not just into the field of 64, but get to the 32 and hopefully the Sweet 16.
They were Final Four last year.
Yes, they were. So if we can see, and that talks about hometown pride. You know, it's about where you're from, and you have someone like Abu who goes to Cairo and is part of an integral part of the game-winning, the winning team, getting gold medal, and then being able to come back home and celebrating. And I think Wayne, going back to the moments that sports creates.
It's absolutely true. And the interesting thing, I mean, this is kind of the tournament that Michelle is talking about, and you're talking about, Walter. It is kind of the defense of the World Championship that we won in Cairo last summer, because this is the same age group that a year after Niagara will participate in the World Championship again. So we're kind of going right back to the well and saying, this is the gold medal at the world level is ours. You got to come through us to try and get there this time around. And so that's going to happen. But yeah, it is those moments, and the moments that can change so many young lives. You know, you think back, and we're talking about basketball today, but as we know, the Canada Games in 2021 are 20 different sports. But if you think back to moments, there's often a moment in the life of a young person where something crystallizes and something comes together. There's been a lot of discussion over the last couple of years that in terms of basketball, part of the reason for the incredible development of talent we've had over the last 5 to 10 years in both genders in Canada is what Steve Nash, but especially in the GTA, that that Vince Carter brought to, you know, he created this opportunity. So young people could look at the TV, see what he was doing up close and personal, or on occasion see him live at a game, and it inspired them. And those are the moments, and the moments can happen at any point in time. But you know, I wasn't a great athlete growing up, but I can look back to my life. A lot of my life has been spent in sport, and I can look back to moments in my athletic career that were crystallized things for me, and things about character and how you act and how you handle defeat, how you handle success, and so on. And all of those kind of moments come together in a wonderful way, and that's really what sport is about. And it's about what the development of sport in this region, the impact that we think hosting events like the Under-18 FIBA Americas next summer, and then the Canada Games in 2021, and all the other events we're going to have in between, they can create those kinds of moments for so many of the youth in our region of the country.
And well said. So when we get back from the break, we're going to talk more about preparing for the Canada 2021 Games, what we can expect and how it's going to take place, as well as get some information on how you can get tickets to the FIBA Under-18. So stay with us. Hi, and welcome back to Our Home with Mayor Sendzik. We have Michelle O'Keefe from Canada Basketball and Wayne Parrish, who is the CEO of the Canada 2021 Summer Games. And so just before the break, we were talking about moments and what sports means to youth in our community. And as we've come out of the Olympics are still fresh in our mind, and so many Canadian athletes did so well. And whether it was on the podium or a personal best, they represented our country with so much pride. And we were so proud, and the outpouring of support for our gold medalists, silver medalists, bronze medalists, and all the special stories that came out. Really, it has a direct line sometimes back to the Canada Games, whether they be the winter or summer. And Wayne, you were talking about moments, but how many athletes make that transition from these games?
It's interesting, Walter, because it's never a straight line. The development of an athlete, as you well know, there's lots of zigs and zags, and there's lots of athletes who are show incredible promise and talent at 12 or 14 or 16, who are nowhere to be found at 24, 26, and then the reverse is true as well. But when you net all of that out, the number that I've seen most recently, I think the COC has used this number, the Canadian Olympic Committee, is that just over 40% of our Olympic athletes have participated in a Canada game. So that could be the Canada Summer Games or the Canada Winter Games. And that's a really neat number. I think what it does is it puts those athletes in an environment where they're not just at a basketball tournament or a field hockey tournament or a lacrosse tournament or a rugby tournament or at an athletic track meet. They're at a multi-sport game, and there's something fundamentally different about a multi-sport event where you've got all of these athletes, in this case from all over Canada, almost 5,000 athletes. In the case of the Olympics, of course, from all over the world, 10,000 athletes, coming together in an Olympic village or a Canada Games village and sort of handling all the pressures that entails, the responsibility of representing their province or their country, and then on the day, in the moment that they have to perform, going out there and performing with all of that pressure and all of the things going on around them. So I think that's a big part of these games, is just experiencing the moment of competition in a multi-sport games. And that's where a lot of these athletes become battle tested. And that in many cases, before they go to their first Olympic Games, that may be the only opportunity they have to do that. So when we look ahead, this is the first time the IOC has committed to 2 Olympics, the sites of 2 Olympics back to back. So in 2024 in Paris, 2028 in Los Angeles. There is absolutely no doubt in anyone's mind connected with sport and elite sport in Canada that a big part of the 2028 Olympic team in Los Angeles will be on show here in Niagara in the summer of 2021. But the best and the brightest of those may well be in Paris in 2024. There's lots of things that have to happen right from 2021 on, but that's the reality of the situation. And it's such a wonderful opportunity for parents to bring their young children, for adults with families, for lots of people to get out and see some of the best athletes that this country has developed. And as we both know, and Michelle knows so well through basketball, I mean, the position that Canada has on the global scale of athletics has grown so quickly over the last 15 or 20 years. When you look at what happened in Vancouver and at the Winter Olympics in 2010, and then the growth from there, and then most recently in Pyeongchang, it's been a tremendous story, and we just seem to get stronger and stronger. And it's through the involvement of communities at the grassroots level, not only as athletes, but as volunteers and so on. And there's so much work that's going to be done over the next 3 years to position our community for that opportunity.
Well, and you talk about it's not a direct line for athletes to get to their goals that they set out, but it's kind of a direct line when it comes to the infrastructure that's required.
True enough.
So we can't host these events. We can't own the podium if we don't have the infrastructure. And I think, Michelle, you would speak to that in terms of basketball as well. If we don't have the infrastructure for high performance development of athletes, we're not going to own the podium.
Yes.
So talk about the infrastructure required for us to be prepared for Canada 2021.
Absolutely. The plan is an ambitious one, but it's very much in line with what previous Canada Summer and Canada Winter Games have done. Canada Summer Games were in Winnipeg this past summer. The summer of 2017. The Winter Games will be in Red Deer in 2019. It's about the capital spend is about a $60 million spend. But I think when you look at the difference today, Walter, compared to 20 years ago, and this is across sport globally, but certainly true in Canada, it's almost, it's not sort of building facilities that benefit the spectators in the near term. And when you look at the horror stories, even going back to Montreal in 1976, but certainly to the Athens Olympics in 2004, to even the Rio Olympics in 2016, there are a lot of facilities that just were built very quickly and then became obsolete almost as soon as the games ended. The difference in the way that we have in this country approached it over the last number of games, both the Pan Am Games, Olympic Games, and the Canada Summer Games and Canada Winter Games, is looking at opportunities to connect the infrastructure that's necessary for the community going forward. So by way of example, quite a significant part of the overall infrastructure spend will be on improving facilities across the Niagara region. There's more than a dozen facilities that will get significant upgrades, and those cover more than 10 distinct and separate sports. Right. It'll all come together at Canada Games Place in Canada Games Park, adjacent to Brock University, where we're looking to fund a sport and ability center that will provide such an incredible resource for this entire community going forward 20, 30, 40 years after the games are concluded. We always talk in legacy in terms of sport, and that's become a bit of a buzzword over the last 10 years or so. But it involves infrastructure, but it especially involves the legacy that you can create for people to utilize that infrastructure, the programs that can be developed, using the catalyst and using the inspiration and the excitement of a games. So it's a $60 million infrastructure build. We're still working with all of our partners, and the city has been so tremendous in your support of that. And we're working to get there so that we can put in place facilities that, yes, they'll benefit what happens in those 18 days in August in 2021. But the far more important thing, I think, is the long-term impact on this community of having the kind of resources, the kind of sport research, the kind of sports science, sport medicine, the facilities for parasports, the facilities for so many other sports that just wouldn't be created otherwise. And it really is a legacy that we leave to our children and even our children's children that is incredibly positive.
And that'll have an outcome on how the next generation of athletes approach their sport. And I want to go back to basketball, because when I was playing asphalt basketball, was never tall enough to really make the team. We just threw the ball around, and you see basketball today. And give us a perspective. Where is Canada on the international scale?
Well, I'm very happy to say that overall as a federation, we're ranked 6th in the world.
We've come a long way.
We've come a long way. Our women's team is ranked 5th in the world. Our age group teams are ranked 3rd in the world. Our men are a little further behind, but they've got a lot less international experience, but we're working through that. But as a federation, we're 6th in the world. And
so there's a special event happening around the U18 America's Cup.
Yeah.
Touch about that, because I think some of those athletes may be playing Canada.
Yeah, we're partnering with NBA Canada on the Junior NBA Canada Regional Final. So what they've created in conjunction with NBA in New York and NBA offices around the world is a Junior NBA program. Each region will have their own championship, and then the finals for Canada will be here in St. Catharines. So what the provincial playdown looks like is there will be pairs of provinces will have their each province will have a provincial championship. The U14 boys and girls will be paired up with another province. The winner of those games will all come to St. Catharines. So to your point, these athletes are U14, they're club champions in their own right in their province, and they're competing for a national title. And if they win, the winners will go down to Orlando for the World Championship for U14 Junior NBA in August. And so these athletes are very strong candidates to be part of the provincial teams that play in Niagara for 2021 Canada Summer Games.
So this is really, Wayne, going back to your point as well, just bringing it all together so that the next generation of athletes, or the athletes that will be emerging onto the international scene playing at the highest level in Canada, we're getting to see them at the age of 14. They get to play at the Canada 2021 Games, and then they may be on the Olympic team or playing for international a Canadian team at the international level. And that's really, and I think it's important for the public to understand that.
Yeah.
It's just that connection between the youth being in sport at a young age and how we can get that high performance, and then you can see the trajectory that they're on.
It's so true, and a difference today, as opposed to a few years ago, is that many of these young athletes are identified much earlier today than they were then. So the kids that will be performing in the tournament Michelle is referencing in June will already know where they rank on Nike's rankings of the best athletes in the world, at best basketball players in the world at that age. I can remember being at the Nike campus a number of years ago, and one of their folks saying to me in Beaverton, Oregon, saying, "Hey, did you know that you have the #1 ranked 11-year-old in the world?" And I thought, no, I didn't know that. It turned out it was Andrew Wiggins. But now you flash forward a few years, and R.J. Barrett is the #1 ranked 14 and now 17-year-old in the world, et cetera, et cetera. So there our ability to see into those teams and see the caliber of those athletes is quite phenomenal. So I think that's what's going to be really neat about this summer when you look at the under 14 and then the under 18. I mean, you've got potentially a crop of 3, 4, 5 future NBA stars in that tournament, and it's really neat to see those athletes as they're developing at a young age, as it is with the Niagara Ice Dogs or any of the teams that
See them come through.
Exactly.
Don't forget the girls too.
Of course.
And now, where do you get the tickets? Because people are going to want to come out and see this basketball.
They're not for sale just yet, but you'll be able to find them on Ticketmaster or on our Canada.basketball website.
Okay.
All the links will be available.
All right, Michelle, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Wayne, pleasure to have you. And folks, you will know as soon as the ticket wicket is open for the U18 FIBAs that are coming to the Meridian Centre. We want the Meridian Centre to be packed. We want them to hear the roar. And we want to make sure that in June, when Canada's playing the United States for the gold medal, that we jam the Meridian Centre and we show our Canadian pride, because Canadian basketball is on the map, and it's going to be on the map here in St. Catharines in June. So make sure you get out, and until then, have a great rest of your March break, and hopefully the spring is a wonderful one for you. Get outside, exercise, explore our community. There's so much to do, and I hope to see you out there doing it. Take care.